Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. The council is returning from a lunch break. To keep us on schedule, we're going to go ahead and get started. And I see that Mike Carrington is ready to go with information technology.
Great. Thank you, Madam President, Madam Mayor, council members. Good afternoon. Originally, I was going to wish everybody a good morning, but now we're good afternoon. Mike Carrington, City's Information Technology Director. Madam President, let me pause for a second. There were a number of questions that were asked in the previous sections. I think I kept pretty copious notes on those. Would you like me to address those now or wait to address them after my presentation?
It's completely up to you.
Okay, I'll save them to the end, I think.
Okay, perfect. Great, thank you.
IT operating, our base operating services consist of 6 divisions. The Administrative Services Division provides strategic visioning, planning, oversight, budget, contract management, and AP and AR, accounts receivable, accounts payable support. Our Technical Services Division oversees hardware infrastructure and security operations, as well as network operations. We affectionately refer to those as our SOC and our NOC. We have a recently recast or reorged division of customer service and operations that oversees software and solution planning, along with support of software applications, technical platforms, and business systems. We also have a relatively new division of Enterprise GIS, or Geographical Information Systems, that used to be in Public Works. Those employees were split in half. 2 stayed in Public Works, 2 came to IT to oversee the GIS platform as a whole. They focus on spatial data as well as the ArcGIS technology platform across the entire city. And then last but not least, we have our Project Management Office, or PMO, which provides project leadership and oversight, business analysis, and coordination and management support for technology projects, as well as related initiatives. Some accomplishments, especially this last biennium, to date, in partnership with literally every department, we've completed 32 projects, major projects, and we continue to count down on those. Still time left on the calendar. Those are large and significant technology projects, and some of the more notable accomplishments include the COVID-19 remote workforce response. It's getting city staff up and running remotely. Standing up a formal SOC, or Security Operations Center. Cybersecurity, malicious content, and associated intent along those lines continues to be the single biggest challenge that the IT department has to deal with on a day-to-day basis. An example in that space, email in just the last 90 days amounted to just over 1.75 million emails coming into the city. 660,000 of those were filtered out as obvious spam or otherwise malicious content. Our security information and event management platform processed over 5 million events in just the last 24 hours. Had my guys run a report for me. So as you might imagine, this continues to be a critical priority for us. It's a really significant drain on time and staff, but it's critical to sustained operations throughout the city. See a lot of organizations and cities in the newspaper over that space. In partnership with especially Finance, PD, and ECD, we've deployed the iNova point of sale platform that provides individuals and businesses with secure, modernized options for making payments and obligations and fulfillment, things of that nature. The ECC, or Emergency Command Center, had a technology refresh that included desktop computing and connectivity, along with teleconferencing technology upgrades. And then last but not least, the one I wanted to mention, especially with the backing of my team, was that additional functionality was implemented on the B&O tax portal. So that website is now at a version 2 level of maturity. As far as IT operations and appropriations go, ours revolve around staffing. We have 33 FTEs. We're looking to temporarily increase that by 2 to 35, and then come down in 2022 to 34. Those 2 positions, important to note, will not require additional budget or consequently authority. Instead, it requires FTE approval only, as the costs will predominantly be covered by the reductions to the IT professional services line item or category. Those consist of a contract support specialist at $110,000 for the full biennium. That will be assigned to the IT administration division under the direct supervision of our administrative services supervisor. IT deals with over 140 contracts that we typically manage annually. Pat and Tammy from the law department can attest to the fact that some of the most complicated contracts in the city are in IT. And that's oftentimes because vendor associations and subsidiaries will go 3 and sometimes 4 levels deep. Quite a few of our contracts are very, very complex. Currently, those responsibilities are handled by one staff member, our admin services supervisor, who is arguably doing the work of well over 2 FTEs, including activity on that front. So at the end of each year in the upcoming biennium, what we would do is reevaluate the situation based on how much of the current backlog is reduced, and at that point in time, make a decision about how best to proceed. But the expectation is to need that person through the entire biennium. We are in what I oftentimes refer to as a bow wave of projects. Last biennium began the bow wave, especially. We have nothing short of 6, 7 major business system replacement projects that are currently in flight, or in one instance, enterprise point of sale completed. And we've got a few on slate for next biennium, but we're also riding that bow wave of projects that got started in the current biennium, expanding into go live dates that equate to the calendar year of 21 or 22. The second position is a technology innovation architect at $77,000. That gets me a part-time employee for approximately 5 months in 2021. And that position will be reporting directly into me. And ultimately what it represents is roughly 5-month transition period as the current technology innovation manager exits the organization and the new IT deputy director comes on board and up to speed. And our tech innovation manager, who's a spectacular employee, is going to be going after his PhD in philosophy and technology. The third and final appropriation request for IT is in the contracting arena, contracting support arena. That's 1 to 2 tier 1 or service desk support contractors at $130,000 for the biennium. And that's to deal with heavy workload periods throughout the biennium, supporting requests for services, which we deal with in the thousands on an annual basis, through both our call center as well as the IT service portal. That is the IT operations and appropriation request in a nutshell. Let me pause to see if there are any related questions.
Thank you so much for that information. Any questions for Mike on this part, and then we'll go to some of the questions that we had previously. All right, I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, great. I will jump into capital then. So on the capital project front, you'll notice that IT has 34 projects proposed. And the remaining line items represent the software and hardware lifecycle accounts, which often at a minimum partially fund these separately listed projects that you see. There's software lifecycle and there's hardware lifecycle. And that's what those buckets, as we refer to them, are leveraged for. I'm happy to speak to any of the projects listed, but did want to focus on a few that prompted questions, especially from council members. First one is the Tiburon replacement project at 1.8 million. Tiburon is the current police RMS or records management system and is considered to be their primary line of business system. It was implemented nearly 16 years ago and is considered to be at end of life. With the advent of police body cams and supporting systems moving to the cloud like evidence.com, it's important to ensure that the police department's core records system stays in stride with those advancements. There are quite a few related systems with critical integrations that will also need to be either upgraded, migrated, and/or redeveloped, quite frankly, from scratch. I've included a business context diagram with my submittal to help articulate those relationships and associations. In answer to other related Tiburon questions, it is the plan to have both reporting and advanced data and BI or business intelligence requirements as a part of the vendor solution selection process. As is common practice as a part of our project management process in IT, we always produce a vendor matrix at the very beginning of a project, among other supporting material, and that typically has the requirements as rows and the vendors as columns. And all of the primary core business requirements are always listed. There are also typically a category of nice to haves. And all the vendors are measured and vetted against that matrix at a minimum. That particular project is slated to kick off in Q1 2021. That is Tiburon replacement. If I didn't answer any of the questions that came through, please, by all means, give me the opportunity. I'd be more than happy to.
Mike, I see that Councilmember Corr's hand is raised, followed by Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you. Hi, Mike. Good job. All the amazing work you guys are doing. There's been a lot of heavy lifting being done in your department, so thank you.
Thank you.
My question is about the Tiburon replacement project. Is this something similar to what we talked about, data analysis that we keep talking about? So would this system be able to do the work that we have been asking?
It is a component of what is envisioned to be a part of the ultimate final solution, correct? That's why I mentioned the vendor matrix, because if those are listed as requirements, for instance, robust reporting that has business intelligence capabilities, whether that exists in the platform that particular vendor offers, or they have a strong relationship with a business intelligence solution provider, that will then be part of the vetting process for the system.
And we definitely need to replace the system because it's basically outdated system. So it makes sense to include the data analysis as part of, the replacement. We're doing the work anyways, might as well, go the extra mile. So thank you, Mike.
Councilmember Larmer.
Actually, yeah, Councilmember Cora asked the same thing. I think we were both going the same direction there. But a little bit of a follow-up question. So if we kick this off in 2021 with the RFP and requirements, what's the soonest we would have the system up?
Well, taking into account, we'll be spending the rest of this quarter and quite frankly, the first month of next quarter, because we've got a lot of systems going live in November and December. But as a part of that vetting process, as we put our work plan together, we'll be able to zero in on a more concise date. But because that is a very large, typically complex, highly integrated system to put in place, we measure it against similar projects that we've run in the past. A really good example is the HCMA or Workday and Telestaff projects. That project, as Terry had mentioned before, has been going on for well over a year for IT and key departments like HR. It's actually been going on for closer to 2 years because of the business analysis and requirements vetting and process documentation that went on as a precursor to being able to vet products and vendors. So odds are it's going to take us at least the better part of 2021, if not into early 2022 to get that product successfully deployed. Again, going through the systems development lifecycle.
Yeah.
But what we more than likely look to do is to continuously come back to council to share with you the progress on the process, and especially as to the chief's earlier point, as we get more information from the vendors that help us zero in on a more consistent go live date, we'd be able to commit to something holistically.
Thank you.
Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Council President. Mike, do you know, and you may not, but it sounds like you're going to be working with the chief on what kind of data this would collect. Would it be similar to what's being collected from WSP on their system?
That's a great and fair question. It has not been a part of any of the activity that we have done to date, especially tracking the conversations that are going on amongst leadership. There was a group, a team, an initiative that members of my team started late Q3, roughly the middle of the year, late the middle of the year last year. And it was called the Business Intelligence Team. And it was very much in an effort to start to put the foundation in place for being able to do robust reporting and data analytics and data mining to be able to up the city's game on that front. This was well before any of the current societal conversations or quite frankly issues started. So we started down that route, and there's actually there's a data maturity model that the feds have released and had in place for quite a while that we were using as an underpinning or a staple for starting to put form and function to that business intelligence team. Some of the key aspects of that really ultimately start coming back to some of the questions that were asked earlier is that data maturity model has dimensions to it that revolve around analytics capability, data culture, data management itself, systems and technology that are needed to help support that, data governance. In my mind, a lot of the questions and conversations that you folks are having really revolve around the data governance, and are we going to get apples to apples and a consistent across the board measurement platform in place that enables everybody to feel comfortable with the information that's being teased out of that data. Most importantly, in my mind, the dimension that is absolutely critical that you do see on that data maturity model, we'll share that with the council, probably in a council workshop if especially the mayor and Madam President can find us some time to dovetail that in, is a dimension of data personnel. If you do not have, and this is what we talked about a lot in the BIT meetings, if you don't have the right personnel in place, that doesn't necessarily have to be new personnel, but knowing how busy our departments are because we work so closely with them, finding the ability to shave things off of someone's responsibility list to add the data onto it can be immensely challenging, but you will be more often than not setting yourself up for failure if you're not only addressing all those dimensions, but especially the data personnel dimensions, right? So for instance, IT can help put the technology in place. We can help put a framework for data management by way of data warehouses, data marts that data can be extracted from and then mined for information dashboarding and reporting. We can put all those things in place. If the people and the processes are not well defined, it will quickly turn into garbage in, garbage out. So there are some very important considerations to keep in mind as we continue to pursue what my personal opinion sounds like everyone is interested in upping our game in, which I think is immensely commendable, and IT stands ready to play our role to help support that.
Thank you. Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you. Yeah, Mike, so as we gather requirements for this critical, data analysis, I just want to make sure that we are, including those data points that we've heard from the community are important. I think, it looks like we'll be going out to RFP before, before the state would come out with anything. So I just want to make sure that we at least include those capabilities that we anticipate in the RFP, and that we don't skip over that part. And then as far as staffing goes, I agree with the garbage in, garbage out if you don't plan well. Would it be reasonable to have a limited term? Because if we went with a new, more sophisticated system, I mean, in theory, if we set up the right dashboards and templates, it should be able to be managed long-term by, an admin or somebody already on staff if we set it up right, where it's just pulling it out. Could that be an approach where we just, contract with or, establish the processes and procedures with the idea that, staff would, with some training, be able to manage it themselves, but it wouldn't require necessarily a extended term FTE.
Mm-hmm. The work that went on in especially the recurring BIT, business intelligence team meetings, from an IT perspective, the biggest things that jumped out to us were where we fell as an organization on the maturity model. We were closer to the left end of the spectrum than the right end of the spectrum. And the right end of the spectrum was a very mature organization. And again, it's a pretty big lift to try and gain competency and expertise in all of the dimensions that are required to be able to do things in a meaningful way. The governance, and I've seen this happen, Councilmember Larmer, in so many instances where technology is at least initially seen to be the silver bullet that will solve all of the underlying needs and associated problems. But so often it comes back to the people and process instead. That we were, and the early BIT meetings were very much of that ilk. You had folks that quite honestly already had at least full-time jobs, if not, above and beyond that. And their ability to be able to section off time to contribute to that, to those kinds of activities, they were incredibly motivated and very excited about doing it. But we were constantly bumping up against all of the priorities and initiatives and projects and day-to-day operations that were going on. So the short answer to your question or / comment from my perspective is that although it would be great to be able to add whatever resources we can into the mix, we have so many big departments here at the city that either have legacy systems, which can be very problematic when you're trying to create data warehouses and data marts with legacy systems. So you look to wait till you've got newer systems in place, and that's really why we put a big reason we put a pause on the bit back towards the end of the year. We figured that we would allow some of the more bigger systems that are moving to the cloud. And again, we've got nothing short of a half dozen of those or more. Were in place so that we could get a better feel for what it was going to take to do all of the data warehousing, data marting, and data mining. Because in the current environment that we exist in with more than our fair share of legacy systems that need to be replaced, it is a huge time-intensive activity that folks just quite honestly don't have the time to do right now.
Thank you. I definitely think this is a conversation that can continue at some point. Anybody else have any questions on this part so that we can kind of keep going?
Madam President, first of all, I would say, Mike, fantastic answer that you just provided, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, I mean, if I had to summarize this here, it's going to require resource to really take on something like this here, is what I'm hearing you say, or prioritization, one or the other. You got a lot of things on your plate now, right? So just get back down to resources, what I'm hearing.
Very good point. All right. I guess we can continue.
Okay. I'll jump to the next project, which is citywide training room remodel at $200,000. As the computer training room in Centennial Center is being reconfigured for the police department, IT still has a critical need for a citywide training room or facility. The IT annex makes the most sense as it already has a space that is configured as a training room. The concern that we have is that the annex is considered a secured CJIS or criminal justice information system site. That means if you have not gone through an FBI background check with associated fingerprinting, you must be escorted at all times throughout that facility. So our request, among other things, includes the reconfiguration of the workspace to support moving our NOC and SOC, Network Operations Security Operations Centers, into one contiguous space that would be represented by the remodeled annex facility. Let me slide into a related question to that, because we also have and I think I might be able to take care of multiple birds with one stone. The Isolate Public Safety Technology project at $100,000 is a project that fundamentally is about ensuring that the PD-related business systems meet the CJIS requirements. Again, that's Criminal Justice Information System requirements. These requirements are critical to the city maintaining its compliance certification, as well as the police department maintaining their respective accreditation. So it's an enormously important project. Separating all the public safety systems into a logically encrypted network environment also supports this particular CJIS related project. And I included a diagram of a business context diagram of the police systems for context. With that was the list of projects that I wanted to make sure that I provided feedback for everyone on. Again, I'm happy to field any questions on any projects. If I can't answer them, I'll be sure to hit up my team, because I know that they will be able to.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Mike?
Madam President.
Councilmember Boyce.
Yeah, I know you didn't talk too much about Workday. HR did a little bit, and not that you have to. Would there be a time where we'll get to kind of see where we're at with that?
Yes, sir, absolutely, Councilmember Boyce. I believe Terry may have briefly touched on it earlier. We're looking to come to committee of the whole with an update on HCMA. We're actually immensely excited about doing that. We are still very much on target for, and that's at the end of October, the last meeting in October. That project is very much still on target for a December 15th go live date. Just a shout out, you folks should be immensely proud of what's going on in the organization right now. We will be sharing examples with you. The amount of work that has gone on to, quite honestly, fundamentally change the way we're doing business in that space. It is becoming immensely more consolidated, efficient, and effective with how we're going to be able to, as an organization, deal with personnel, human capital in that instance is an industry term, from start to finish. And it's really exciting to see that come together. That is a massive project.
And Councilmember Boyce, I think you had asked to have us have an update on that, so I appreciate it. And yes, it is coming to committee at the end of the month, so thank you. Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you. So Mike, forgive me, I'm trying to understand the training room here. Okay, so the IT annex today, who works there today?
It's IT personnel that work there today.
And they're background checked.
Correct.
I think it's the need for this background check and security that I'm a little confused on.
Yeah, and that's because that entire area has access to CGIS systems that require that compliance. So you have to have those background checks to even be in the building, technically. Otherwise, you risk your compliance and certification. So there's remodeling that has to go on in order to make sure. Right now, the only entry to the training room itself is by entering the building. So some of the revamp, and I included a mock-up, a diagram of a mock-up that had been put together early on. This is not the final one. To be quite honest with you, I was actually really pleased with the team that they had done this level of work in the very beginning. I think the date on that is 2018. It's been a while, so that has to be worked in concert with Julie and her folks, Alex, in facilities, to make sure that it's appropriately spec'd out. But for all intent and purpose, we've got a good umbrella start on that, and that's why we're making such a fuss about ingress and egress to that building.
And then what kind of trainings and how often do we train in this room today?
In the current one in the IT annex?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually quite a bit. There's a calendar. I could double check and I will make sure to get the latest updated numbers for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite honestly a question I've been asking for quite a while, but my team did a really good job of pushing back on me on that because it is used quite a bit.
Okay. And do we anticipate with COVID and remote situations that more training will take place remotely?
Oh, absolutely. That, as a matter of fact, right now, that's really been the norm versus the exception for most, if not all, of our projects going on, with the assumption that at some point in the future, not too distant future, we'll be having to come back on site. I think Terry touched on a really important point, work-life balance right now. It's in part why, myself and my colleagues especially, we're looking a little weathered. We've been kind of pedal to the metal for quite a while. So being able to get on site and just simply be able to have 5 minutes to walk between meetings is something, we're all actually kind of looking forward to. But with our assumption that we'll eventually be back on site, that we will still need that space. Now, the other major impactors to that are especially the one that I noted about being able to pull. Right now, I've got quite a few staff scattered, quite honestly, all over the place. And we take a hit from a service perspective on not being able to have especially key groups together, right? We know, despite as hard as my team works, we know that our service is impacted, level of service, as a result of that and the quality of that service. So being able to pull the network engineers and the security folks together, the knock and stock, we're envisioning our service desk being revamped in there. And so being able to get the right folks in the right place at the right time is also, especially for me, near and dear to my heart for this request in that facility.
Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Council President. What is CGIS? I know you told us, I forgot.
Yeah, no problem. It's Criminal Justice Information Systems. Sometimes you'll see it as services, but to be quite honest with you, I think the last word changes on their website. But it's actually a very, very important certification, and it contributes to PD's accreditation. We get, it's all hands on deck when those folks are telling us that we are either edging towards not being compliant, or there's something that they need us to put as a priority on our project list to make sure that we remain compliant.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. Any other questions for Mike? All right, do you have anything else to present, or is that?
I was going to, if time permitted, to circle back and see if I can answer some of the questions that were brought up in other presentations.
Okay.
I'm going to try and do that real quick.
Sure. Just a couple minutes, and then
okay.
You may have answered a few of those, but let's see what you have.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to actually start off with that. The IT system costs, and from Councilmember Fincher and others, Councilmember Michaud had asked about the consultant and assisting with data analytics, the potential cost in that. I feel like I answered that, but if I didn't, please let me know. Okay, hearing none.
I think we're good.
Okay, the last one was Councilmember Core had asked a COVID in relation to COVID response. I think, Councilmember, you were either asking about internet access reimbursement or internet access support for staff, or both.
Both, actually.
Okay. From a support standpoint, the IT department's approach is one in which we offer best initial effort. If it's something that we know, and we're running into a lot of this, ends up being internet access issues for that person, that staff member, at their, more often than not, home. So we cannot, obviously try and troubleshoot deep and wide issues that look like they're on the connectivity, especially side of the house, for that staff member. But because we are a service organization, we make a best effort. Typically, we'll try and spend at least the first 10, 15 minutes helping them troubleshoot those issues. Lots of times we can help get those issues resolved. But if it gets deeper or wider than that, then we have to acquiesce to them working with their service provider. So that's the approach we take with staff. From a reimbursement standpoint, that's something that, quite honestly, I would look to acquiesce, especially to HR and the mayor's office on. That's not something that IT takes purview over or pretends that we have the leeway to be able to influence.
Thank you, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anybody have any other questions that were missed? All right, thank you so much, and thank you for allowing us to move you to after lunch. We really appreciate it.
No problem, anytime, happy to oblige.
All right, we are going to move on in presentations, and I'd like to welcome Chad Bieren to talk about Public Works.
Good afternoon Council President Troutner, Council. Hope you can see me. I'm not seeing myself in my screen. So am I there?
That's great. And we can see your presentation on the, we actually see your budget presentation up there as well. So that's perfect.
Perfect, thank you. Just going through quickly, I'll just step through the sheet. I understand my bonus gets doubled if I get us closer to back on time here. So I'll move us along as quickly as I can. And feel free to interrupt with questions if you have them. The first item, the current FTE is 195. We are moving down from 199, as Mike mentioned earlier. Two of the GIS positions that were here housed in Public Works have moved over to IT to help with the migration of a lot of our systems over to our GIS-based permitting software, CityWorks, and a number of our new software systems are GIS-based. So it just made a lot of sense to move those positions over, and that's already occurred. And then during the COVID discussion about the COVID adjustments, we eliminated one TLT and then a transportation engineer 3 that we've been advertising for quite a while. And I know Tim's probably mentioned it before. Transportation engineers are extremely hard to find. That's why we like ours so much. They're great anyway, but on top of that, if they decide to move on, they're so hard to replace. That position was was vacant, so we eliminated it during the downturn. And then for proposed FTEs, we have 2 additional FTEs that are proposed in the mayor's budget coming on in 2022, and that's to take care of a landscaping maintenance. It's a crew to take care of all of our new landscaping that we've brought in as part of our capital improvements over the last few years. And I'll get into that more under new appropriations. Under accomplishments, in years past, I think we've tended as a department to put in projects that we've been working on. We're a project delivery department on the engineering side, and obviously on the operations side, we're a maintenance and operations division. And so listing accomplishments is great, but in talking with Dave Brock and Mark Howlett and other staff here in the department, we really wanted to highlight 2 different things. The first one is our people, and I think Julie covered it earlier. Our COVID response, I couldn't be prouder of the city in general, being part of the city team, the way Kurt mentioned it, Raf, the way everybody has pivoted and continued to deliver all of our services throughout the city. In Public Works, we took kind of an emergency management approach to it. And in a very short time frame, on our operations side, we went to crews that were working 1 week on, 1 week off for about 7 weeks. And then we pivoted again and we moved to full-time work for everybody. We're a little bit behind still, but we're trying to catch up on our maintenance for the year. But we've allowed everybody to get back to work, and we did it safely, which I think meant a lot for the employees, but also just getting us all back to work and delivering those essential services have been very important to everybody. And I find that the morale over in operations is doing very well. Obviously, it's not perfect. No organization is perfect. We've had people that on one end of the spectrum think that COVID is not really that big of a deal, and other people probably would prefer that we're all wearing moon suits to try and get through this. But as Terry mentioned earlier, I think we've had 5 cases in the city. We've had 1 in Public Works operations and 0 in engineering. And we continue, I think, to be successful organizationally and moving forward, providing service without anybody getting sick. On the engineering side, we went from full staff in the office to almost a skeleton crew in about 3 days. And I've mentioned it a number of times. I really want to make a shout out to Mike and his crew in IT. The technology and having the technology behind us to be able to do that has been amazing. Folks took their PCs home. I know we have new laptops coming, Surface laptops coming through the CARES Act, but people came in, brought their cars in, grabbed their stuff, packed it away. They were all working at home, on their home Wi-Fi or other systems, and we've continued to deliver projects. In a typical year, we have about $25 to $30 million worth of projects ongoing at any time. In 2020, because of big projects we had from past years, but also projects that we continue to deliver, even in the face of COVID, we're at about $40 million of delivery right now. And so you see things like 4th and Willis that are under construction, or 76th Avenue are under construction. And a lot of that is being able to change our game plan, but keep going with what we had on tap. And so under that heading of people, I've just been very impressed with our team. I told them that repeatedly, that I couldn't be prouder of what they've done and the work they've been able to accomplish. And then under projects and programs, that really, we obviously, again, I said we're a project delivery office. We're also a program office. When you look at our cross connection program, our NPDES program, we talked about many times in front of council, all the programs and projects really are about relationships and building relationships. So I've noted interagency and interdepartmental collaboration. And by way of, if I can use projects as an example, Meet Me on Meeker project's been described earlier. Really, we've done a lot of work between departments, ECD, Parks. ECD went out and really spearheaded the grant application on that. We helped out on the back end in engineering with putting the grant application together, but Haley Bonsteel really led that effort. Ken Langholtz, who's now retired, but he led the effort on TIB side. We have 2 different TIB grants that have been part of Meet Me on Meeker. We have a federal grant. We also use some placemaking funds. I know there were park funds included. So as I mentioned the other night at the council meeting, very excited that the south part of Meet Me on Meeker, the south side of Meet Me on Meeker improvements are going to be done from the river all the way to 64th Avenue by next summer. The 4th and Willis Roundabout, we have the state appropriation that the mayor and Tim worked on about a year and a half ago. Been working extensively with Parks and Finance to try and make sure we get all that funded and all the improvements. It's going to look really neat out there when it's done here in a few weeks, the first part of it. And then also just working with the police and RFA, making sure that as we stage that construction right up the street from the police station, that we weren't going to impact emergency response time. And the neighborhood itself also had several neighborhood meetings with the South Park neighborhood to describe the project and the impacts. And because of that, it's been very successful. We have very few complaints. 76th Avenue South, we're raising the road right in front of Blue Origin. We've been developing as a department, and I don't mean just as the city, but also the Public Works Department. Our relationship with Blue Origin has been terrific. We've worked very closely with them on the coordination with their driveways and making sure they can get their folks in and out of their facility and between their 2 facilities, well, really now 3 facilities up on 76th. Republic Services is also right there. Posey Brothers, longtime Valley business, is their headquarters right there. And we obviously got the TIB grant to help get that done, and extensive work from the law department. The stormwater from the new roadway is going into the pond that Blue Origin built just south of their facility. And the value of utilizing that storm pond for this detention and treatment of stormwater from the road was huge. And getting that into our agreement with Blue Origin when they did their development agreement, law worked on that extensively and couldn't appreciate that anymore either. Also, obviously, we've opened up the 224th Street corridor, have some work left to do on that, but it's largely open and operating. We do have a request coming for additional funds to complete the road up to 217th and Benson, but for right now, we're very proud to have that one open. 220th UP will be open in the spring. We lost about 7 to 9 weeks on the construction of that while our contractors were responding to COVID, but they've been trying to catch up very quickly on that project. And then our 2020 overlays, successful project, moving through Chestnut Ridge, primarily a number of other neighborhoods, a couple up on West Hill. Private development really hasn't slowed down that much, and our folks continue to work with ECD, development engineering on the approval of those projects, and then our construction group works on inspection of it. And then working with the flood control district, we have almost $75 million of work on tap in the flood control district's budget between the Milwaukee 2 levy and the Signature Point levies, which our engineering group and Parks Planning Group are working very hard on those projects to make sure that we're bringing them in a timely manner. Because the way we see it, we'll get more money from the flood district as needed if we're able to deliver those projects on time and on budget. So again, just the those relationships are so important between departments and also with outside agencies. Any questions on any of those projects? Before I move on, I want to move into the new appropriations.
Thanks, Chad. Quite a list there, and I don't see any hands raised, so.
Okay, I'll keep moving. Under new appropriations, first one is the National Bridge Load Rating Study. We have 32 bridges in town, or 31 bridges in town. 21 of those are vehicle bridges. They all need to be inspected periodically, and under this 2-year budget, we need to inspect 10 of the bridges and have the National Bridge Inventory updated by the end of 2021. So that's kind of a have to that we'll fund out of the street fund. Under bridge repairs and maintenance, the B&O paying for minor maintenance on bridges. The example we use here is the Colonel Joe Jackson Bridge needs some work. It's now getting up about 15 years old, and some of the railing needs to be removed or replaced and graffiti removed. So we want to get that done in this budget. Sewer and drainage, 2 new equipment trailers. You know, we've been doing, we call it Shops Inc., where operations crews have been doing more and more work in the, excuse me, in the field. And it's become apparent that it would help out a lot if we get these 2 new trailers and trucks to, or excuse me, the trailers to move equipment and parts around. The trailers we currently have are just too small for some of the bigger pieces that we need to move on to sites. Julie mentioned earlier, we're trying to extend the life of the Russell Road facility, our maintenance facility out there, built again in 1969 when the city was 17,000 people, housing a lot of folks. And in making that facility go as long as we possibly can, we've been moving storage onto other sites. And so we're asking and funding through the sewer, drainage, and water utilities, 2 forklifts, one for the new pump station site at the corner of 64th and James Street. We have storage that we're adding to that site to take the place of storage that we have at the James Street facility, and then Russell and James. And then at the Kent East Hill Operations Center, which I think Council Member Larmer asked earlier, we kind of go back and forth calling it East Hill Shops or East Hill Operations Center, but we have a number of items that we store outdoor up there, and we need a forklift to move those around. Water out in the Clark Springs site, we need a utility vehicle and trailer, and this is to get to the edges of the site. After storms, we'll get knockdowns, trees will knock down and take out the security fencing. Very difficult to get out to it because it's still a very wild site for those of you who've been out there. You know, it's pretty much woods out there. So this is one of those little Gator 6-wheeled vehicles or similar. I don't know, it'll be a brand name Gator vehicle, but 6-wheeled all-terrain vehicle with a 2-wheel trailer that they can take fencing materials out to the far edges of the site and repair those, make sure we keep our security fencing intact. 2 water service trucks that we're requesting are actually upgrades to, we need to replace existing trucks, and this is to upgrade them to a heavier duty truck. The current trucks that we have, they have compressors that are built into the truck itself, and the work that we're doing is just a little bit too aggressive for those, so they're in for repairs quite often. So as part of the replacement, we need the $250,000 to get a bigger, more heavy-duty truck. The next item, and I think Julie alluded to this in her presentation earlier, $200,000 each year to try and deal with illegal encampment cleanup. This is, as everybody on council knows, making your way around town. It's a big issue for us, 65 illegal encampments that we keep track of, along with those that just kind of crop up. At lunch, I tend to run for exercise. I've run up into Mill Creek Canyon, not very far, because there are a number of encampments up there. So I've seen them, and I know it's going to take a lot of work to get them cleaned up. The intention here was we think that's going to take probably about $100,000 for public works crews and roughly $100,000 for parks crews to keep up with illegal encampments. And this is specific to areas that drain into streams or other environmentally sensitive drainage areas. So Mill Creek Canyon and Earthworks Park would be kind of the key example on the park side of a parks facility that drains into obviously Mill Creek, and we need to keep it cleaned up, keep the environment cleaned up out there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the 2 FTEs, the maintenance crews for landscaping. We've added landscaping to James Street, Pack Highway, number of other facilities. It's also part of our design and construction standards. So private development that's been coming online since 2009 has been adding a number of planter strips throughout the city. Some of those are required as part of the development. It's required that they keep track of them and maintain them. Others the city takes on. And so this is a 2-person crew, full-time crew to go out and keep those landscape maintenance area or maintained. Feasibility study to look at this is funding from the utilities to take another look at the East Hill Operations Center. We spent a lot of time, energy, and money out there in the early 2000s developing a plan to construct that site. And in fact, I was looking back through some documents when Tim retired. My desk, one of the advantages of COVID and people being out of the office, I took the time to rearrange my office and clean it, which hadn't been done in a while. And then Tim told me he was going to retire, and he took a lot of his materials, and I don't know if I had this or put this on the heading of illegal dumping, but he gave me a lot of materials. And one of them noted that we were supposed to have the East Hill Operations Center done in 2010, which I know council's aware of. This is the utilities portion of the feasibility study to take a look at what's out there now and kind of reimagine what we can do on the site and how we might be able to phase it to fit our budget reality now. The plan back in the mid 2000s was to spend a significant amount of money, more like $50 to $60 million, and bam, we'd have a East Hill Operations Center. But obviously that's not our financial reality right now. So this is to take a look at what we can do and when we should be able to do it. And then water, sewer, and drainage on the utility billing releases. This is updates to our billing software. And then those IT and utility allocations are part of the budget process. And lightly there, I'll just cover it. Under the unfunded needs, we put in a request for an additional restroom building at the Russell Road maintenance site. I think Tim's mentioned it before. I think we have 2 urinals and 3 stalls in the men's room. I think it's 2 stalls in the women's room. I'm ashamed to say I don't know the number, but I'm proud to say I have no idea what it looks like in the women's room at the Kent East Hill or Kent Russell Road maintenance facility. So at some point we'll address that situation, I'm sure soon. Any questions on those? If not, I'll go over to the capital.
All right, let's go ahead and keep moving.
Okay. Just a note on this for the capital projects, these are new monies. So some of these they're not total project costs. And this is just for clarity to keep it consistent with what's shown in the budget documents. But for instance, the South 212th Street project, we're going to overlay 212th between East Valley Highway and 72nd. And we have a $1.4 million federal grant. Again, back to those relationships sitting on PSRC. I'm on it's called the Regional Project Evaluation Committee, the RPEC, and was part of the scoring committee for projects. This was in 2018. We got $1.4 million for next year to overlay 212th. So we have another $1.5 million of B&O funds that were in there, and we need to add an additional $1.5 million to fully fund that project at roughly $4.4 million. So I won't dwell on all of these, but I'll just mention kind of what's shown here is consistent with the budget document, and then I'll give closer to the total project cost. So the transportation master plan, that's an additional $50,000. That'll be a total of $940,000 to update the TMP, the transportation master plan, which hasn't been done for about just over a decade. And that'll come to council first quarter of 2021 for action. West Hill Reservoir, we talked about that a number of times at council meetings. Again, additional money. Total project cost for that project is going to be closer to $12 million. We have money in the current, from current expenditures in the budget. We just need to add to it. Again, I think we've mentioned to council a number of times, we have one transmission main that feeds the West Hill. We have emergency connections that we have between Highline and Lake Haven if we need them. but just between this Kent system from the valley and up the hill, we have one transmission main across Meeker Street. So this is to develop another one across the 228th Street, the Joe M. Jackson Bridge. Lynn Heights Pump Station needs to be replaced. That's about a $5 million project. So we, again, additional money. Skyline Sewer Interceptor. This is to replace the Skyline Pump Station. The school district is building a new school up by the Grandview Park, and we're going to be able to take out the pump station and hook into this new sewer. So it's about $1 million project, and that is the total cost on that one. Mill Creek 76th Avenue flood protection. We have 2 state grants for this project that total $3 million. We're adding an additional $3 million in this budget. And then this total project cost, this replaces 3 bridges out on 76 just south of Blue Origin. It's really part of the larger Mill Creek reestablishment project, where we're going to dredge out Mill Creek and improve the flow, reduce the potential for flooding out there. We have to do some substantial bridge replacement. So all told, that's about a $16 million project. So we will be looking for outside funding for that. 81st Avenue Pump Station is, this is near the corner of 196th and 81st, near Hexel. This is an area that floods when we have significant rain events, and we want to be able to put a new pump station up there and eliminate the flooding. Again, a project that we're adding $2 million to, but we see that as a total project cost probably closer to $5 to $6 million. A Washington Avenue pump station. We have a pump station that serves Washington Avenue. It needs to be replaced as part of the Signature Point Levee project. We've talked to the flood district about it, and that's really going to be a cost that's on the drainage fund, not part of the Signature Point Levee. And we're going to include drainage that comes off of Fifth Avenue, the South Park area, in a new pump station, combine the 2 drainage areas and pump them out directly to Greeley River. So we should be able to reduce any flooding that we've had during major events in South Park, and then also keep it eliminated at Washington Avenue and Willis Street. And then left on there, we don't have additional monies coming in on the railroad quiet zones, but it's something we are obviously still very involved with, and Rob Brown is working very hard to move that through in 2021, along with our Signature Point Levee. And with that, I'm done.
Awesome. Great job. Anybody have any questions? Councilmember Boyce, I see your mic is off.
Thank you. First of all, Chad, first presentation, you did a really good job. I mean, lots of information. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see. Now, there's no money for the railroad. I thought I saw, right? The quiet zone.
No additional money. There was 1.4 million already budgeted by council.
Okay, so we got enough to go. I made a promise to Councilmember Higgins to oversee this year. So you're saying there is money for future railroad quiet zone, right?
So yeah, there was $1.4 million appropriated. We've spent about 537. We've replaced all the paddles out there. We've had 2 railroad diagnostic tests or meetings. We've used a number of those meetings to inform us as to how we can improve the area around the crossings to help move that process through the UTC and through the FRA. So that's where the expenditures come. That's my long way of saying, I hope we can get it done for that much money. We initially said when we started on this, it would be about a $2 to $4 million project. We think the number is coming down closer to that 1.4, but we won't know until we go through the UTC hearing and we see how hard BNSF fights us on the quiet zone.
Okay. But once again, great job, Chad. Really good job. Thank you, bud.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Chad? Wow, we're gonna oh, nope, I see Councilmember Thomas. I thought we were gonna let you off easy. Councilmember Thomas. No, and I don't see.
No, you could let him go. I'm sorry, but I need to talk to Kim when you get a chance.
Okay, we'll get that taken care of. All right, I don't see any other hands raised. So great job, Chad. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I am going to turn it over to Derek Matheson and your team, Derek, to talk to us about the administration and what's happening.
All right, thank you, Madam President. So I'm going to talk about the administration department, which includes the mayor's office, the city council, the city clerk's office, communications, and now within communications is the multimedia, which has come over from the IT department in the past year. Our department has 19.75 FTEs, and that does reflect the move of multimedia to administration, and it reflects the move of a communications specialist from HR to administration. Next year, we're proposing 20.75 FTEs for an increase of 1, and that reflects the equity manager that we'll talk about in a couple minutes. Significant accomplishments this year include leading the city's work on COVID-19 and equity issues. At the beginning of the year, I don't think we expected, well, I know we didn't expect COVID-19, and we didn't forecast such a strong national interest in equity issues. And so we've pivoted quite well in leading the organization in those 2 areas. We've restructured the communications team without an increase in citywide expenditures or FTEs.
Yes, go on.
Residents connect.
I have no, I don't know if you guys can see me, but I can't see.
Let me hit the mute here. All right. So connect with residents more frequently and tell Kent's story. And our communications manager, Bailey Stober, has done a workshop with the council and talk through what's happening in the communications division. And we have a follow-up workshop scheduled for when we're done using our workshop time for budget to continue that conversation. And then in the city clerk's office, we're on pace to respond to about 6,700 public records requests and invest about 560 hours on close to 850 requests for body-worn camera videos this year. Our base operating budget is around $5 million. About 3.7 million of that comes from the general fund. About 1.1 million is the multimedia internal service fund. And then close to 100,000 comes out of the criminal justice fund. And that's to pay for the 1 staff person in the city clerk's office who processes public records requests for body cam footage. Our operating services, as you know, are to oversee all facets of city government and provide oversight of all programs and services. We provide a communications link between the city and the community through a variety of media, including in-person, video, print, and social media. And then, of course, we manage the city's official records, public disclosure of records, elections, and then the city council agenda and minutes. New appropriations are 243 or 244,000 next year and about 221,000 the following year. The bulk of that is the equity manager position. So salary and benefits for that position is 169,000 next year, a little over 173,000 the following year. This new position will report to the mayor through the chief administrative officer. We're currently finalizing the job description and thinking through the recruitment process with the goal of having somebody on board at the beginning of 2021. I know there has been council interest in what that position does. We're addressing that through the job description, and also when we went through the equity matrix a few weeks ago, you got to see some of the projects that will be assigned to that person initially. But if you have other feedback, please feel free to let me know. We've set aside 25,000 next year and 20,000 the following year for training and incidentals. My guess is that's a little bit high, but it's a new program and we want this person to be able to participate in local, state, and national networking and training. And so we may adjust that in the future based on our actual experience. And then we have 50,000 next year for a strategic plan. We've talked in the past about the equity strategic plan. We think 50,000 is as good a guess as any. And then we have 25,000 the following year for consultant support. Councilmember Larmer had a question about that. Again, it's a new program, and so we've pulled a number out of the air and tried to be conservative. We can adjust that up or down if council would be more comfortable with a different number. And then we have a small IT allocation there, and none of the needs that administration put forward were left unfunded in the proposed budget. So I'm going to pause there before we turn the page to capital.
Great, thank you, Derek. I do have a couple hands raised. I'm going to start with Councilmember Larmer.
So Derek, yes, my question was around the, as you said, the consultant support in the ongoing years. Not so much the amount, but like what exactly are we going to be asking a consultant to do versus would be just a responsibility of the equity manager themselves?
And I wish I had a solid answer for you today because it's such a brand new program and a new program in many cities around the region. We just don't know that yet. We didn't want to leave the position high and dry if some initiatives that come out of the equity strategic plan require consultant support. So if council's more comfortable, we could zero that out and revisit it mid-biennium, or we can just continue to keep our eyes on it and adjust it downward based on our actual experience when we go into the next biennial budget process.
Thank you.
Councilmember Core.
Thank you, Derek. I guess I just have a comment. So the only thing equity I see in this whole budget is the equity manager position that we have. I mean, Mayor has talked about, focusing on race and equity issues, but in this budget, it hasn't been addressed. So just kind of a comment that if we're going to talk about that we care about race and equity and we care about our community, maybe have some feedback and look at the budget at every line item and focus on equity. Just saying it doesn't mean that you actually believe in it. You need to put your money where your mouth is. Just a comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Boyce.
Yeah, I think about the equity manager, I know Derek said he's still working on the job description, right? So, and I think Terry will be aware of this here. There is a SHRM, Society of Human Resource Management, that is recognized nationwide. So I think it might be a good idea to maybe use that as a base as you start looking at your job description for the equity manager. And I guess my ideal and thought for the equity manager is to put the strategy together on how we want equity applied across the organization. And I think that was the purpose of that position, to help us, the organization, make sure equity apply across the organization. That's correct, as part of being some of the responsibility for the equity manager for strategies across the organization and how we will go about implementing those strategies within the organization around equity.
Yeah, you saw as we went through the equity matrix that there are a number of things that we're doing in the equity space, that we're starting to do in the equity space, and things that we'll identify through the strategic plan and where the equity manager will provide leadership. So I think there are areas where adding funding might be appropriate, but there are also areas where we integrate it into the way we do business. And that's where the manager will be very important and be a resource to other departments throughout the organization.
Thank you for that, Derek. Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you. I'm not sure, Derek, if you have this already included in there. I'd asked before that we do basically an equity quotient assessment or cultural competency assessment looking at racial equity, but also other forms of equity, people with differing abilities, LGBTQ community. But is between the equity manager and the consultant that's being hired, is that planned to be done? And is it going to be done probably by the consultant to give a leg up to the manager? Because we need to know that information too, to be able to move forward, to see where we actually need, where we lack and where we need to add in.
Yes, we haven't created a scope of work yet for the strategic plan. So definitely open to that feedback and other feedback as we figure out what the plan looks like. We've talked a little bit about whether we do the strategic plan and then bring on the equity manager, or if the equity manager does the strategic plan. And it might be a little bit of both. We might do some foundational work first and then have the equity manager influence that and bring it across the finish line. So I guess that's a long way of saying I'd certainly acknowledge your interest, Councilmember Fincher, and please keep the ideas coming and we'll make sure that we track those.
Thank you. Councilmember Larmer.
Okay, also, just to be sure that that's also internally and externally.
I believe so, yes.
I was saying that that's also internally and externally.
Meaning?
Looking at, our policies, our people, what we're doing now, how we're doing it, as well as in the community.
I'd love to talk more offline and understand that a little bit better.
All right, do you have any additional questions?
You got it.
Fincher? All right, Councilmember Larmer.
Derek, you just said something that, as this strategic plan is put together and we may realize there's gaps that need funding. Is there any reason we wouldn't establish a fund today? For example, I think, that 25,000 for consultant support that we're not sure if we're going to need could, be in a fund allocated towards future equity measures. I'm just wondering if there's, a reason we can establish that today.
I think kind of like having to guess that 25,000 for consultant support, it's anybody's guess today what might be needed. But just because we put that that $25,000 in there for consultant doesn't mean that it couldn't be used elsewhere. We budget on a program level, and so that we would have some flexibility there based on what the plan produced.
I would just want to make sure that it and other funds that could become available are earmarked for equity and equity only. So something to think about.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
All right, Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Council President. Derek, do you think that the strategic plan would be done by by the biennium budget so that we would be able to have this equity conversation for our next budget?
Yeah, I think it would be done sometime next year. Maybe not before staff starts work on the mid-biennium budget adjustment, but certainly before the council starts work on it in the fall.
Great question, thank you. Councilmember Boyce.
Yeah, I'll just get back to Councilman Larmer. I mean, the statement you were making earlier, I think around the consulting, and I think Councilman Larmer, you will probably operate as a consultant. I guess the way I see it when I'm thinking about the equity manager, I mean, you can bring someone in to do the job, to understand the skills and how to implement the job. But I think when you're talking about a strategy, usually, something that is kind of new to us, I mean, I think is the way I see it is that person as a consultant is probably the subject matter expert in many, many areas as a consultant who can really help talk about what it looks like at that 30, $20,000 foot level. And then your record manager will come in and help with that and then help with the implementation. I think if you bring a new person in and you ask that person to do the strategy and the day-to-day work and the planning, I mean, I see that being a big responsibility and may take us a while to get where we need to get to, right? So that was my ideal and my thoughts around the consultant, kind of help us hit the ground running so we can get off with this right away. So I don't know what your thoughts around that, Councilman Larmer, but that was my thought.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the 50,000 because I do believe that that's a huge effort to ask for a new FTE to become the equity manager as well as then do the strategic plan. But it's the consultant support in the future years. I'm just not sure what that would look like or what would be required beyond that. So
I guess I was more looking at the head, not necessarily the dollar. I mean, because I'm hoping it doesn't cost that much, but I think for us needing that particular position to kind of help us hit the ground running, I think it's critical. I will hope it costs a lot less than 50 grand, but I think we all agree that that's a critical position so we can hit the ground running right away once that manager comes about.
agree.
All right, I see some hands still raised. Did everyone get their questions answered on this part? All right, Derek, I'm going to let you continue.
All right, then let's turn the page here to capital, and I'm going to let Bailey speak to that because all of the council's questions related to capital that supports our communications work, and then he's also going to respond to a few questions that we've received from council members about the communications team.
Great, thank you. Really quickly, Councilmember Show, your hand is still up. Did you have a question about the previous slide? Okay. All right, welcome Bailey.
Thank you, Council President, council members. Derek, as Derek indicated, I'll start with the questions that council members asked on the capital side, and then I'll move. There was a couple questions on operating side, so I will answer those second, and then answer any other questions that you have for me about communications and budget. So starting on the capital side, I have to say, question 32, Councilmember Larmer had asked. It excited me because she always gives me my good social media questions. So her question was, I'm curious what Sprouts provides that something like Hootsuite does not. So for those of you who have no clue what we're talking about, Sprout Social and Hootsuite are social media management tools used by organizations and companies to help them manage their social media platforms. The city currently does use Hootsuite already. What we found is Hootsuite is fairly outdated as far as social media management. It lacks a lot of the functionality that a large organization with multiple departments, such as a city government, has and requires. Sprout has many features that we have discovered that go above and beyond what Hootsuite is capable of. Some of those things are Sprout allows greater collaboration with a social media asset library, which we can link to the MAM, the Multimedia Asset Management System, which I'll talk about next. Hootsuite has about 10% of the capabilities that Sprout does. It's restrictive when it comes to post scheduling and content planning. Sprout offers automated responses and chatbot features on all of our social media platforms, which Hootsuite does not. Sprout has an advanced post scheduler and collaborative content calendar that's much more robust. So it's going to be easier for us to work with other departments in the city, particularly keeping in mind that we have 2 departments in the city that are still decentralized in their communications. So Economic and Community Development has Michelle Wilmot, and Parks and Recreation still has Haley Elliott doing their communications work. So we're working across city departments to kind of coordinate our communications, including all of our social media posts. So this provides us a little more flexibility to do that. And then last, but certainly not least, or excuse me, there's 2 last points. Sprout has an advanced analytics tool and reporting capabilities that Hootsuite does not. And Hootsuite also gets rid of our analytical reporting after 90 days. Sprout retains it permanently, so we can go back and see historical data over several years. And then the last piece is that Sprout has a content builder for paid advertising and Hootsuite does not. So as the city has talked about telling our story regionally, as well as to our residents, we're at a point where we want to run paid advertising sometimes. either promoting an event or program or idea or policy. And Sprout gives us the capabilities to design those ads internally in that system and then run them through our social media platforms. So again, that was a great question. I know we kind of wonk out on social media sometimes, so I was glad you asked. Question 33 was also a question from Councilmember Larmer, which was, are there any additional capital expenses related to the new Kent Workstab? Again, I thought that was a great question. We've actually accounted for the subscription and the maintenance costs in our administration department lifecycle budget, which is managed and housed and administered over in IT. So as we get new tech programs, they look at the annual subscription costs, they look at maintenance, and then our contractual obligations, and they put that in our lifecycle replacement plan and budget over in IT. So there will be some costs, they're pretty small, but they are built into the lifecycle replacement budget that you heard from by Mike Carrington earlier today. I'm going to pause because I do see a hand up.
Councilmember Larmer, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bailey. So just a couple follow-up questions. Does Sprout, how do they handle translation?
So they do have some translation services built in, but we have also been exploring and utilizing some of our community partners to do some more translation services for our comms products that we're delivering to the community. I have a preference on using our community partners when applicable. With our COVID-19 mailers, for example, we've been using community partners, and that allows us to build relationships with community members here in Kent, as well as pay for translation services from Kent-based businesses. So we're keeping that money here. We're investing in those businesses, primarily businesses owned by people of color, and building those community relationships here. But Sprout does have some translation features in it. But, you know, I get nervous when we talk about things like Google Translate because it's not always accurate. And even Google says, please don't use Google Translate for government purposes.
And then second, so it's 30,000. Is that like our yearly subscription then? Is that going to be?
Yeah, so that's the actual acquisition cost, including the design and the back end setup, and then the ongoing cost for it, I want to say, comes out to about $3,000 a month, which is built into comms budget. It's not an additional budget request because I'm basically moving around program spending to pay for that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Corr.
Quick question, Bailey. Thank you for the presentation. Do we need to spend this $30,000? Could this be spent somewhere else? Could we do it without it? The reason I'm asking is because there's things that we are like lifeguards. We're, basically reducing them to half. So trying to move money around, but we're spending $30,000 on Sprout social media. So just kind of, it's probably not, you probably don't have the answer to this, but it just seems like we need to be looking at, overall picture of our city, because we seem to be spending a lot of money in our communications department right now, but we're not spending a lot in the services that we are already providing. So something that needs to be looked at, and that's also an equity issue, in my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with absolutely. I think that's a great question, Councilmember Corr. It's kind of a two-part answer specifically on Sprout, because this is a capital budget request, not a general fund budget request. So we can't necessarily spend capital dollars on things like lifeguards because that's a operating expense. But to your point, I think in order for us to continue to build a robust communication system, in order to reach more residents, including our residents of color, and be able to reach them where they're at rather than expecting them to come to city government, we have to increase what we're doing in the communications realm. And currently with our tool Hootsuite, it doesn't give us the capability to continue building and growing like we should. To me, it's an indicator. While I'm proud of where our social media is, for example, having 12,000 people follow a Facebook page in a city of 130,000 means we have a lot more work to do if we're going to meet more residents where they're at. And social media is actually the cheapest investment we can make in communications other than other traditional media. If we looked at like mail, for example, significantly more expensive to send mail to our residents than it is social media. So as far as the return on investment goes per dollar, this is the best bang for our buck to reach more folks and build those broader audiences so we can reach them organically in the future. But I definitely hear your point.
Thank you, Council. Do
I
you
have
have
a follow-up?
another
Sorry.
question?
Yes,
Sure.
thank you. So the follow-up is, how do you know you're going to be reaching the communities of color with social media? Because we're already trying that. And my other question is, you mentioned COVID mailers that were mailed using translation. How did we know what language those mailers were being sent to which household? Because my household received 3 mailers and they were all in English.
So two-part question. I can answer the mailer piece first. So all of the mailers that went out for COVID actually had on the backside of them, the primary language on them was English. However, on the backside, they were translated into our top 5 languages, directing them to our COVID website where there was additional translated materials available. We used local translators to do that, and we did our top 5 languages based on census demographics. So while the mailers you did receive were in English, if you looked on the backside, they were in our top 5 languages, directing them to those resources. How do we know that we're reaching the communities on social media? It's because we believe in data analytics and reporting and tracking back. So when we run social media ads, for example, like we have been for COVID, we've actually been running them in our top 5 languages. And we've been using Facebook demographic information to match those top 5 languages to the Facebook users in Kent. And we've been receiving data analytics reports back that show how successful or unsuccessful the ads are. So part of the reason we like Sprout rather than Hootsuite is it gives us even more analytical tools to measure that data and to track that data and then to retain that data longer. So for example, next year, if you asked me this question, I'd like to be able to provide you the report to show you how we're doing year over year and month over month in making progress in communicating with those communities of color that are speaking other languages. Hootsuite doesn't have that potential and Sprout does. So not only will we be able to reach more people, we'll be able to track it and then justify the return on investment when council asks questions like that. And it's a great question.
Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you, Madam President. Am I on?
Now you're muted. You were on, but now you're muted.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you. So I just wanted to express how I strongly agree with Satwinder on this one, because although maybe you can't directly take 50,000 from one to the other, her idea, her philosophy is correct, and I wanted to back her up on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Boyce.
Yeah, I guess Councilmember Thomas spoke, but I thought we already agreed on the lifeguard, right? So I think I heard the mayor commit to paying that, right? So that's why I want to be clear. I don't want to be hearing about we're not. I mean, that's something the mayor agreed on. I mean, I think for the position itself, really, I mean, one thing we always talk about as a council members, we have to do a better job in communicating and reaching out to our audience. I mean, that's something we talked about, right? So there's lots of ways of doing that. So when you say, in Councilmember Thomas, you don't support it, really, I think what Bailey, at least from what I understand, is he's trying to go broader and deeper and using the best technology possible to reach all types of audience, right? So I say this all the time, we need to keep reaching out, find multiple ways, many ways to reach out to our community. And if this is gonna help us do that, then we should do it. So I mean, we can nitpick this budget apart as much as we want to. By the end of the day, there's some things that's really essential for us to survive and move forward as an organization. And one of those is reaching out to our community of color, our community of the people that live in Kent, and all of our citizens, period.
Follow up?
Yes, very quickly, and then I have other hands raised.
I believe what the mayor said, Bill, was that she believes the lifeguard situation is a high priority. That's what Derek expressed that she thought anyway, that it was a high priority, but there was no real strong commitment that way. I mean, I believe she'll find it somewhere, because I think we're going to be following up as well. So keep going here. I'm sorry. That's
All right.
enough.
I just want to say, if we can just move on, I think we've covered the lifeguard piece this afternoon. Let's kind of stay on track here and get back to communications. Councilmember Michaud.
I'm drowning.
Okay. Bailey, how much does it cost to send a mailer to all residents?
Depending on the size of the mailer, it can range anywhere between about $8,000 and $14,000.
And this is a question for Derek. Derek, I want to clarify something that Bailey said and that I don't know the answer to. You can't move capital funds to operating expenses. They're two separate budgets. Is that correct?
Yes, but Bailey said a couple of things, that with Sprout, there's a capital cost and there's an operational cost. But also just to make it very clear, we will find a way to fund the lifeguards. And so that I don't think it'll be necessary for that particular program.
Thank you.
And I want to be clear, Derek did tell me during break that I would be pulling Saturday and Sunday shifts up at Lake Meridian as a lifeguard.
For free?
Absolutely.
That's a raise.
Councilmember Michelle, I'm guessing your questions are answered. Thank you. I'm going to move on to Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you. Bailey, why were Parks and ECD left out of the communications consolidation into the mayor's, into the admin budget?
That's a great question, Councilmember Fincher. That's a great question, Councilmember Fincher. We wanted to try and basically test what a phase-in would look like if we did consolidate and centralize communications. And thus far, we've seen great benefits to it. We wanted to implement it with some of our smaller departments, for example, HR, finance, IT, integrate them in and give them more communication support. So this was an experiment. It's worked very, very well. In my dream world, my recommendation, of course, would be to centralize the rest of communication. So we're all on one team and one page with one message and one voice. But obviously, that's not where we're at today. We've been consolidated since July. So we're still only a couple months in and ironing out any speed bumps that have popped up. So it's worked really well so far. And it's definitely something that I would recommend the city look at in the future at a later date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Core.
Thank you. That was one of my questions, ECD and parks being left out. Yeah, that was my question. Right now, I don't, well, and just to clear my point, I wasn't pointing out just the lifeguard program. I was pointing out in general, we have services that are being cut in departments, and we are spending money on social media platforms. Like we're spending money on Sprout or multimedia asset management software. I'm sure they're needed, but I'm sure there are other capital projects that we could use this funding on instead of doing it on communications. Thank you.
If I can ask a quick question, Bailey, you mentioned that we do some data tracking. So since we have upped our engagement in communications and through social media, what kind of results are you seeing? Are you seeing an increase? How are we noticing that we're reaching our community at this point? Do you have information?
I don't have the exact full report. I'd be very happy to provide that to council. I can tell you on the Facebook side of the house, our engagement is up over 100%. On the Twitter side of the house, we peaked with over 300% increase in engagement. And the Facebook analytics tools are a little bit better than Twitter, but it shows us exactly where the folks engaging with us are posting from and where their accounts are linked to. And it's over an 85% success rate of Kent residents engaging with us and posting with us. And these tools are only going to make it better. We've done a lot of things in the social media realm. For example, this meeting right now is being broadcast on Facebook for the first time in city history, which has been tremendous engagement as council members have seen residents commenting and sharing their opinions and beliefs about what we should be doing or not doing, or their opinion on the issue of the day. So we've had tremendous engagement from our residents, higher than any point we've had in city history. And the diversity of the engagement has been very impressive. So I will actually put together a new metrics report and send that to council so you all can see the numbers for yourself. But we're at a historic high right now.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think something, we are dealing with this very difficult time. So it's hard for us to reach our residents. When you look at what the mayor has done, what the chief has done as far as town hall meetings and being able to take questions from residents in a different platform, I think has been able to help us engage with our community a little bit better. So.
Well, and to your point, Council President, right now City Hall is closed because of COVID. So residents couldn't come here and ask a question if they wanted to. So our social media has been critical during this pandemic.
Thank you. Councilmember Cord, did you have any additional questions? Councilmember Michaud, or I'm sorry, Councilmember Fincher, I'm going in order.
Thank you. So today and most of our, or I think all of our meetings now are being broadcast. With the meetings, with what we're putting out right now, do people have an option to be able to see that or listen to that in other languages, or are we putting it out only in English, or do we ever have anything captioned or signed? No, once before I asked for one of our meetings to be captioned, closed captioned. So what are we doing as of today?
That is a fantastic question, Councilmember Fincher. So we have English closed captioning on our products right now for folks of different abilities to be able to still know what's happening in their local government. However, the mayor has actually issued a directive that I have been starting to work on with staff to start captioning our products in other languages into our top 5 languages. So we are getting to work on that right now. I know our video crew has already been doing research with other cities across the country that do this. They're typically larger cities, but we want to get on board and start doing it too, so we can engage more folks that way. So we are in the research process right now, and we're looking forward to having a final product hopefully very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we are getting close to the time of needing to be wrapped up. I apologize because I know your time is very important. We've just got a little bit more to go this afternoon. So if the rest of you don't mind, Bailey, do you have other information to share?
I do, Council President. There was a couple other council questions that came in that I wanted to make sure that I hit on, if it's okay with you. The next one was question 45, which came in from Councilmember Michaud, asking about the multimedia asset management system. Is this a way to organize and find media? The answer is yes. Currently, the multimedia team produces content for 10 departments and then retains all the data and assets. The system would allow for assets to be stored in a central location and available for departments, including templates for frequently used forms and documents. The current infrastructure is a flawed system. A department requests photos be taken of their event. We send a photographer from multimedia who attends the event, takes the photos, uploads the photos in a database, and then they sit there. The departments do not actually have access to their own assets that they own. So parks, for an example, would request, they want to build a flyer, so then they submit a ticket. They request on the ticket a photo of a child playing basketball at sunset. We scan our photos, we find one, we edit the photo, we send it back to parks. Turns out the picture we sent was a kid playing basketball at sunrise, not sunset, and the process starts over. We play this ping pong game with our departments back and forth to get them the assets they need. It takes a lot of time, it costs a lot of money, it burns staff time and efficiency. So this system houses all of those things in one place and allows us also to build forms and templates. So for example, Public Works does a lot of community meetings around like the 4th and Willis Roundabout, for example, letting that community know what's going on. Every time they want a postcard for a community meeting, they have to submit a ticket, we design it, we send it back. This would allow us to build more templates, so Public Works would be empowered to build their own postcard by changing the date and time on the template we built and be able to send those out automatically without days and days of staff time and work. So this will actually increase efficiency and be more productive for staff.
Councilmember Larmer, do you have a question?
So Bailey, I just want to clarify. So you're saying right now, so we have Office 365 and we don't have like a group shared drive?
We have some shared drives, but we're talking about 5 terabytes of data that need to be acquired basically because of how many assets we have. And the city's digital assets date back years and years and years. So it's quite a lot. And we haven't found a system like 365 that can handle that much, as well as have the tagging features and the separation features for 10 departments.
Council, oh, I think that there's no more hands raised. Sorry. Thank you.
Then I'll keep moving quickly, Council President. Question 49 was from Councilmember Michaud, asking what is public educational and government projects? So we call that PEG money, P-E-G, here at the city. PEG money is a direct result of our negotiated franchise agreement that we have with Comcast Cable Company. So when a utility corporation locates within a municipality, we negotiate a franchise agreement. So during our negotiations with Comcast, we negotiated that Comcast will pay the city 41 cents per subscriber the first year of the agreement. They pay 50 cents per subscriber the second year of the agreement, and they pay 60 cents per subscriber the third year of the agreement and going forward. The revenue from PEG money are tracked and separated, and we use the money to pay for technology and tools to ensure the public has government access. For example, this meeting right now is being broadcast on Kent TV 21. So the cost to film, produce, and broadcast, as well as the tools necessary, like the cameras to make it happen, are funded by PEG money. When COVID hopefully is over soon and council returns to the dais, the microphones you use, the TV monitors in council chambers, and the cameras and audio equipment, all in the council chambers, were purchased with PEG money. So this allows us to buy the technology to continue to broadcast your meetings and ensure public has access to their government, their local government. And really quickly, Council President, if there's no questions on that, there was a couple of operating questions that I can run through very quickly, with your permission.
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. So Councilmember Core asked an operating question about what positions were centralized and eliminated. So the answer is there's 3 central communications folks. Myself, I cover the mayor, city council, the administration department, and all citywide communications. Josh covers public works, finance, and information technology. And Tracy covers police, court, law, and human resources. The decentralized communications team is Haley, who covers parks, and Michelle, who covers economic and community development. And the eliminated position was Dana in public works. The note on this is that that position in public works was funded through a combination of project-based enterprise funds as well as general funds. So with the centralization, we now use 1 FTE to cover 3 departments, including public works. It's increased efficiency with an overhead savings. Councilmember Core also asked a question, which was, what was communications related budget for the prior 5 years compared to now? And I sent this answer just now to finance to make sure that you get it in writing in front of you, Councilmember Core, and have the document as well. But I did provide the last 5 years comparison. In previous years, I provided the cost of communications as well as multimedia broken out, since they were in 2 different departments. So you could have that analysis, as well as what the cost for communications was in 20, as well as the projection and the proposed budget for 21 and 22. I will note that from 20 to the proposed budget in 21 is an 11% increase. And then from 21 to 22 is only a 2% increase. What I should note is in that 11% increase, it's not broken out and carved out to note that we had the majority of that increase is the 1 FTE transfer from human resources to administration. When you take out that FTE salary and benefits, it's only about a 6% budget increase from 20 to 21. And again, there's no FTE add. And if that position was still in HR, the city would still be expending those funds. So there's not actually an increase other than probably about 6%. And I see there's a hand up, so I'll pause.
So Councilmember Core, do you have follow-up questions?
Yeah, just thank you, Billy. So was Josh under communications before, or was multimedia?
The Josh that's doing communications for public work, we have 2 on the team. One's in multimedia and one's in communications. So the one that's in communications prior to July did not work for the city. He is a new hire.
Okay, and that position was added, or it was because of that limited position from public works?
So when we lost our neighborhood programs coordinator, we had a vacancy.
Okay.
It was Tony previously.
Yeah, I remember that, and I thought Uriel was going to.
He's covering the responsibility, but we had the FTE opening. So we converted that FTE position to do communications work. And then Yuri and I have been working on the neighborhood programs separately without adding any FTEs. We've just shared the workload.
Okay, that's disappointing, because I think if we were going to fill in a FTE position for a neighborhood coordinator, we should have filled in as a neighborhood coordinator, because that's where we need it. But it seems like we just added more people to communications. Thank you.
The next question on the list was from Councilmember Core asking about the Multimedia Fund. She said, is that the print shop or multimedia? The answer is both technically. The Multimedia Fund is the bank account that pays for multimedia services, and the majority of the fund is funded through internal contributions from departments paying for the services they use. So the print shop is included in the Multimedia Fund, as well as video services and graphic design and creative services. And the last operating budget question was also from Councilmember Core, who noted on page 133 of the mayor's proposed budget, it shows a change in fund balance and where was that money moved. So what you're seeing in the Multimedia Fund regarding the fund balance is at the time this budget book was created, it appeared that multimedia may go slightly over their budget in 2020 by an amount of $66,000, and it would be covered by fund balance. The majority of this number is because in March, before they joined the communications team, so yes, I'm blaming IT, Mike, it was necessary to add $38,000 to their budget for copy machine maintenance. The good news is, since they've joined comms, and as of recent months, they've been running under budget. So that $66,000 number should reduce before the end of the year, and we're hoping that they don't actually run over budget by the end of this fiscal year. And with that, that's all I have, Council President.
I'm sorry, can you explain that again, please?
Yeah, so multimedia was projected to run about $66,000 over their budget because in March they had to add a contract for copy machine maintenance for the copiers, and that was the majority of the $66,000. It was $38,000. And since they've been part of the comms team, they've actually been running under budget every month. So by December 31st, we're hoping to have eliminated that $66,000 overage because they're running under now.
Is it also possible because due to COVID, we don't have staff in office?
Our print shop's running full time, so it didn't actually shut down for COVID.
Okay, so the 66,000 was just projected, so it hasn't been moved anywhere.
Correct. It's not an actual yet until the end of the year, so we're hoping to eliminate that number.
Okay.
By running under.
Okay. I'll have Paula. I'll check in with Paula on this later. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Council Member.
All right. Any additional questions for Bailey or Derek on administration? All right. Did you have anything else to add, Bailey, or was that it?
That was it. Thank you, Council President, Council, for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. We are going to move on. Paula, you have a little bit of time left. I know we've run over, and again, I apologize. But I want to give Paula her allotted amount of time. So.
Thank you, Council President. I will not take my full allotted amount of time. I'm going to just start off by saying we didn't ask for anything, so we were approved for everything we asked for. So thank you very much. Just real high level, right now, finance is everything accounting related. So that's going to be our tax division, our financial planning or budget group, which you guys have got to spend a lot of time in meetings with as of late. Our accounting and reporting division, and that does everything from payroll, general ledger, accounts payable, CDP cards, annual financial reporting. And then we also have our customer service division, and that group actually handles our utility billing for 30,000 of our customers. We have meter readers, which is kind of an unusual dynamic in the finance department, but they go out and actually read the meters for us and provide that data so we can get those bills out. Also, as what was asked at our last meeting, finance does run central stores, and central stores provides us an opportunity to use some purchasing power. So we're able to contract out for office supplies, buying in bulk. We get reduced costs. There's some efficiencies and some savings that go with it, both to the departments and to the city. It also does handle our mailroom function. So we do handle mailing everything out. It comes in, we apply the postage to that, and we also do some sorting of the mail when it comes in. When we talk about accomplishments, you guys have already heard about this, and that is the implementation of the Inova system, which is a receipting system that went into our customer service division. And, I want to give a big shout out to that customer service division. That is a group that is really a forward-facing group within finance. So often we are internal support, but through all of COVID, they have had to find ways and means of still covering our office, because we have to be there for our citizens to take their phone calls, to provide them with assistance, to take their payments, to answer their questions. So I really have appreciated all that they've done and the support that we've had from IT and facilities to ensure that they could do that work safely as well. So thank you very much there. In addition, the city each year applies for the GFOA awards. And once again, the city received the Achievement for Excellence Award in Financial Reporting for the 2018 CAFR, which is the annual report. And on September 30th, we actually mailed out the 2019 to GFOA for their award program, and it will take several months before we hear back. So we're looking forward to that. In addition, the city was recognized by GFOA with the Distinguished Budget Award for the 2019-2020 budget. And that is all that I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions for Paula? Councilmember Corey, your hand is still raised. Did you have a question for Paula? All right. I am going to move on to Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you. Paula, is utility clearing, is that the billing? What is the utility clearing?
Councilmember Fincher, that is actually the way we do our accounting. So the majority of our customer services division really is there to support our utility funds. So what we do is the utility clearing is the fund that we use to do to record all of the accounting related to our work to support the utility. So our account reps, their salaries and benefits are charged to that utility clearing. Same with our meter readers and utility billing analyst. Then what happens is every single month we allocate out to water, sewer, drainage, all those utilities that we're supporting, we allocate out those costs. So the utility clearing is just that. It's a clearing account for us to put our expenditures in and then to distribute them to the appropriate utilities.
Thank you.
At the end of every year, it does equal zero. It is just kind of a holding place until it's allocated.
Thank you. Kind of like a pass-through account. Goes out or comes in and goes back out.
That's correct. Yep.
All right, Paula, I don't see any more questions. Did you have a second page, or was that it for your presentation?
That is it. I do not have any capital. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much. Before I wrap things up, Derek, did you want to add anything before we close today?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. First of all, a huge thank you to our department directors for the work that they've done to prepare their presentations today, and then provide those to the council and respond to questions. I think everybody has given a lot of their time today, from council members to staff, and we greatly appreciate it. As I've listened to the discussion today, it occurred to me that we have a really good system for addressing council members' questions. Basically, council members submit those to staff, we log them, and then we respond to them at an upcoming meeting. What we don't have a system to address is council members' proposed budget changes. So I wanted to propose that we actually create a council member proposed budget changes log, kind of like the questions log. And council members who want to propose changes to the budget can pass those along to Paula and me. We'll log them. If they have a cost associated with them, then we'd like to work with you to figure out how we either generate revenue or shift funds from other programs to cover the cost. And then at the next two council workshops, we would work through not only the remaining questions, but also the proposed changes. And then I wanted to say, speaking of the questions log, we've answered some in a very systematic way, like when Paula went through and identified the question and the number, and then others we've identified in the course of director presentations and council discussion. So we've been taking notes, and we're going to move questions that we believe we've answered from the pending section to the completed question. But if we move something that you feel like we didn't answer, or you didn't understand the answer, or need more information, please let us know, and we can move that one back. We want to make sure that we leave the door open so that you get all the information that you need to make a decision. So the next workshop is about a week and a half away, and we'll stand by and ready to log any more questions and also work with council members on proposed changes.
Great, Derek. Thank you so much. So you have heard, if you have additional questions, I know some of you said you would follow up with Paula. So that gives you about a week and a half. Councilmember Boyce, your mic was off. Did you have a question?
There's a process question, Derek. So
Sure.
example I'd like to give you. So if I have 100 different proposals on how I want to make changes to the budget, then I need to give you 100 solution that go with that, right? So I'm just thinking about the volume, right? So there's a lot of volume that you may or may not have, and I just want to make sure it is the best way to handle this here. And I'm okay either way.
Well, I hope it's not 100. If we get to that point, then we'll probably want to engage the council and figure out which ones the council as a whole wants to move forward. But as I listened today, I think there's a handful, and some of them just came up over and over throughout the course of the day. And on those, we can work with the council member or council members to come up with how we would pay for it, and then bring that back to the full council.
Thank you.
Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to say, Derek, thanks so much. I think it's an amazing idea. And I think that most of us, before we propose something, we would ask a couple of council members how they feel about it first. So we wouldn't have 100, hopefully.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Michaud. All right. I think that brings us to the end of our afternoon. I just want to take a couple minutes and give thanks to some people that helped get us through this day. Thank you so much, Paula Painter and Michelle Ferguson, for keeping us going with these slides. It's really helpful to see those sheets in front of us as we talk with each of the directors. I always appreciate seeing the accomplishments of each department, but I think what's really great to note is how each department has handled difficult situations through COVID, and still been able to provide services to our residents and to our employees. I think that in itself is a major accomplishment. So thank you to all the directors for taking the time to put that information together. I want to thank Kim Komodo for keeping us in line today as well. Those of you that don't know, she has been sitting in council chambers all day today, making sure that our meeting runs smoothly. So thank you so much to Kim. Thank you to our multimedia team for taking care of us when we've been on break or lunches, and of course, making us continue to look good and getting this information out to our residents via the different platforms that we use. Also, thank you to my colleagues for your thoughtful comments and questions. Make sure that we are providing the best quality services for all our residents and making sure that that is reflected in our budget. Madam Mayor, I want to thank you for allowing us to be a part of this process. This is your budget, but we appreciate you allowing us to provide input. So again, we continue to say that transparency is very important, and I want to thank you for allowing us to be a part of it. I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. Have a great rest of your weekend. And thank you so much for spending your Saturday afternoon here and having some great discussion. So thank you, everybody. And we are adjourned.